everyone, this is CLOT Talks, podcast for those who love art and technology. My name is Daria, and today our guest is Lyndsey Walsh. She's an American artist, designer, writer, researcher, and cultural worker based in Berlin. Lyndsey primarily categorized her visual creative practice within the realms of biological art and biodesign. She has exhibited her work internationally and has publications with Nautilus Magazine, CLOT Magazine, and many more. Her work explores the cultural and social quagmire of disease, identity, the body, human and non-human relationships, and speculative narratives of the future. Currently, Lyndsey is visiting scholar and researcher within the Department of International Biophysics in Germany, and she's a professor at Mo University Art Science Center in Russia. Welcome, Lyndsey. Nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you too. Thank you for having me on.
Yay, we're very happy to having you. So, my first question would be, what was the reason to start working with the biological art and biodesign? How did your interest come into the art and especially working with the biomaterials?
Yeah, so I've kind of always been driven towards art, but I had this really strong and intense talent for science. I ended up really excelling in all of my science classes in school, and I was often getting into trouble actually in my art classes for creating things that were either too disturbing or not following the rules, as if art is supposed to have any rules to begin with. But however, I was really determined to do something creative with my life and not become a scientist. So for a while, this was actually with music, and I trained for a long time to be a singer. But by the time I got to university, I started to really throw myself into my degree program and explore different styles of interdisciplinary practice. And I started to not be able to see these disciplinary boundaries between art and science as I was moving so fluidly between the two of them. And because of this, in this great degree program, I found all of these wonderful professors who were really supportive of the ways I was working and thinking, and they ended up really encouraging me, which was amazing. And biological art and biodesign kind of became the solution for me that gave me a name to my interests and how I was thinking and working. And I found over time that working with living materials was something I was really excited about because I had this strong foundation in science and working in labs as a biologist and zoologist, and the issues that I wanted to talk about I could do with my artistic practice, and the concepts of ethics and biopolitics were such big topics, and so art was just really a great way to address them. And then I ended up gaining that confidence I really needed to find my artistic voice to own.
Yeah, that's great. So about the education, what are your first steps in biodesign field? You were the student in New York University Gallatin School, I think, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I actually didn't end up getting into really biodesign until kind of towards the end of my degree at NYU. Because I was really quite lost in my senior year of college about what I wanted to do after I graduated. I feel like most students are.
Yeah, they are.
Your entire life, you're told exactly what to do, and then you graduate college, and you're like, oh, wait, now what am I supposed to do?
Where should I go?
Yeah. So I was coming out of this really amazing degree program where I had so much freedom and I could do whatever I wanted and talk about whatever I wanted and research whatever I wanted. And a lot of the professions that my friends are going into were really not exciting to me.
Yeah.
So I kind of wanted to go into a graduate program to extend this this period of being a student and this freedom that I had, but I really didn't know where or what I wanted to study. And so I ended up, during the winter break of my senior year, I got dragged to the Museum of Modern Art with my best friend, who was entertaining a friend coming from out of town to New York City. And so when we got there, we were walking around and there was this exhibition called This Is For Everyone, Design Experiments for the Common Good. And I came across this print of Oren Katz and Yonat Zer's pig wings. Yeah, and it was like something kind of like clicked for me, and I was like, oh, my entire college career, I just thought I was like this weirdo who wanted to like combine science and art, and like it didn't make any sense. And then I was like, people actually do this, and it's like a legit thing, and like they work at a university and they have their own lab. Like, this is really cool. And so like Orana Yonat like made me realize that like what I was doing was a legit interest, and had like this professional sort of ability to like go out and do something. And so I ended up contacting Yonat because I saw that they were affiliated with the University of Western Australia with their Centre Symbiotica. And I emailed her kind of not really expecting a reply, but thinking like, oh, I'm a student and she's a professor, she should respect me and like answer like students' emails, which she does. She's wonderful. And we started talking over Skype and email, and then I ended up just applying to Symbiotica's master program for biological art, and that's kind of how I got into it. And I moved across the world to Perth, Australia, and yeah, that was the end of it.
Super cool. That sounds like mind-blowing.
Yeah, so like definitely, if you want to know what degree program you should go to, maybe check out some art museums. You never know like what artists you'll find.
Yeah, great advice. That's very cool. And what was your actually first like experience in bio art, science art, and it was in Australia?
No, so before that, see, I didn't even know science art was a thing. I was kind of just like doing it on my own. But I had this the senior thesis project I was doing at NYU that was being supervised by a famous like biodesign architect, Mitch Joachim. And I was basically trying to like redesign how we classify the skulls of whales, dolphins, and porpoises. And I was working at this lab in this hospital at New York City called Mount Sinai with this very famous whale anatomist named Dr. Joy Reidenberg. And she was very kind to let me use all of her whale bodies for this piece. And so I was like creating animations of their skulls and like trying to re-articulate science knowledge within this artistic way. And so that was kind of like my first dive into it. The materials weren't alive, though. And then I think it just kind of sort of, once I got to Symbiotica and I was allowed to like work with stem cells and other living materials, it kind of just like kept going.
Yeah. Well, it sounds like you were really lucky with people. Like, so many of them were so grateful and nice to you, yeah?
Yeah, for sure. I think I've definitely been lucky. I know lots of other people, it's been a struggle to get into institutional spaces, but I think like if you come with good intentions and you work really hard and like they're excited, and it's always like the scientists who are a bit weird and like kind of like into different things too that you get along with. It all works out, so...
It was a fortune.
Yeah.
Well, let's talk about your projects, actually. You worked on a Revolution project that highlights optogenetics technique. Tell us about it. What was it? What was the motivation behind it?
Yeah, so this project was actually, I was just really inspired by the scientists I ended up meeting at the Department of Experimental Biophysics. I got in a referral from... I was doing material design work at Rockefeller University before this, and so I got this referral from the head of the lab there to talk to Dr. Peter Hegeman, who is quite actually a very big name in the field of optogenetics. He's one of the founding like figures of the field, which I didn't know at the time because I was like little bio artist not thinking about optogenetics at all. But we met and he invited me to come talk at the lab, and so I came to Germany and I gave a talk, and I ended up meeting one of my now colleagues and the scientific collaborators on the work, Olga Badukova, and she was like so nice, and also like the work they were doing was so interesting that I was just like, oh, this is quite cool. And so she was basically, they were creating different mutations in this algae species called Chlamydomonas reinhardti. I might have butchered the second half of that Latin name. And these mutations were impacting the channel rhodopsins. So these are certain proteins, kind of gated ion channels in the algae that would have different reactions. And so they would, what Olga was studying was kind of how that would impact their photo responses. So how they would respond to light, whether they would go towards light or away from light. And I thought this was really cool to like think about in terms of genetic engineering and like these narratives of control, especially control of other organisms' bodies and bodily components. And a lot of the research that happens in biophysics, it happens at such a microscopic level, since it's mainly related to like proteins and like different modifications. And so I thought it would be really interesting to try to connect certain ethical and cultural aspects to create this like bigger picture for biophysics. And I was kind of wondering how I could create a space or a conversation that could talk about these concepts. And I think I ended up joking with my friends and like maybe my mom that I was going to go to Germany and make algae dance to light. And
that's so great.
Yeah. And so this joke kind of ended up sticking with me, and I found this performance of choreographing light dances for different strains of genetically modified algae to be both like wonderfully absurd and humorous, but like also a really great initiator for conversations about agency and control. Especially when like I would like talk to people and be like, yeah, I'm just making algae dance to light. They'd be like, wait, what? Why are you doing that? I'm like, for fun.
For fun.
Yeah. For art. And
I think the best projects that came to life are the one that was a joke for the first time.
For sure. Yeah. No, I think humor is like such a great like source of inspiration for art. And like it's just to have a sense of humor about it, it's very necessary, especially when you're talking about such serious topics. It sometimes makes it easier, and also topics where like no one really emotionally relates to algae. Most people want to get rid of it because they think of it like pond scum and like in their swimming pools and like being useless. So I think the humor actually makes it much more approachable in a way.
Yeah. I agree.
Yeah, and it was really funny because then, like, when we were doing the project, me and Olga, like, the algae would get bored of my choreography and then, like, not want to dance anymore. And so we ended up, like, talking about the algae like it had more agency than what, like, we usually refer to them as. And,
well, that's great.
Yeah, so it was really cool. And it ended up painting this beautiful, wonderful artistic narrative that my colleagues at Humboldt thought was quite interesting, and they were so supportive and enthusiastic. So I hope that once Corona kind of settles itself, that I'm able to bring the work to the general public somehow.
Yeah, hope so. About the other project, I think it's not so funny. It's terrifying, actually, in some way. The return of the teratoma.
Ah, yeah.
That's outstanding. How was the idea for the project born?
Oh, well, thank you. You're the first person who's ever called the work outstanding, so like that really means a lot to me. So this project was kind of born out of like my morbid fascination with teratomas. Teratomas are these like tumors that have this potential to grow teeth and hair, and like there's all these like scientific papers that document like different teratomas that have been found in the human body. Like one had like 300 teeth inside of it, and like they're so bizarre. If you want like some really gross reading and Google searching, look up teratomas. And so I was at Symbiotica, and I was planning on working with stem cells with Dr. Stuart Hodritz in his spinal cord repair lab. He was my other thesis supervisor in addition to Jonat Zur, and kind of serving as like my science supervisor for my thesis. And I was like really fascinating with this monstrous generative potential of teratomas. And there have been some other artworks that look at generative potential of tumors before, like Biotechnica, which was done by Jennifer Willett and Jason Knight. And that came at it from the perspective of a speculative biotech company. But I was kind of really interested in how the history of stem cell biology was entrenched in this obsession with teratomas, and how teratomas were like this recurring product as well of stem cell biology. I think like some of the first stem cells were isolated and like viewed from teratomas and like rats or mice, which is really interesting. And To this day, like one of the major tests in stem cell biology to make sure that your like culture of stem cells is pluripotent enough so it can become enough different types of cells is to make a teratoma in a rat. And that's like the gold standard testing of stem cells. So I thought it was like really interesting that stem cell biology doesn't really use this language of this sort of monstrous element to it at all. It kind of like, especially the aesthetics of it, really goes away from that. And Melinda Cooper is another researcher who I found really inspiring because she was talking a lot about the impact of neoliberal capitalism in stem cell biology. And so I was like, what if I try to view stem cells from this different, more monstrous perspective to kind of highlight how stem cells can become cancer cells, which never really gets talked about, and what kind of impact will that create in an audience, and also how will I feel about the things being made in the lab? Because in my head, a teratoma, since it has such a broad definition, a teratoma is really just like a natural or monstrous or abnormal product of the cells in their environment, which is definitely what happens in the lab. The lab is quite an abnormal and unnatural place. So I feel like in some ways, any sort of entity, cellular entity made in the lab could be a teratoma of sorts, with this very broad definition.
Yeah, wow.
So I was like, let's take these like lab-made entities and place them back in the real world and kind of show how displaced they are. And the teratoma that I made for my horror film ended up actually being like not so horrifying, but rather just like cute, which I like. Yeah. It has like 2 little retina spots because they were made from retinal organoids. So these were little stem cell structures that had been grown to be quite large and had developed retina cells of the eye to study the ways that retina cells develop, to look at different patient treatment options. And so they had little eyes, and I made little teeth for them, and they were quite cute. They look like little, like, I don't know, kind of weird fish things.
Yeah.
So I liked how cute they were.
Creepy, like, a little bit.
Yeah, they're quite uncanny. But they're like, they're not like grotesque or anything in the sense. And when I showed them to my collaborator, Marc de Pasquale, he was like, "Oh, that's quite cute." I'm like, "I know, right? They're adorable." My little teratomas.
Yay.
So
nice that you take something so bizarre, something horrible, and make it so nice.
Yeah. Well, cuteness is like this other weird form of like horror and like uncanniness in a way. So I was like, that's perfect. I love things that are like cute but make you feel uncomfortable, and I love that duality of it, like the attracting aspects versus like but I'm kind of like not, this doesn't make me feel so comfortable. Yeah, which I kind of feel like is a perfect metaphor for stem cells, because like they're really appealing, but also they can have this like negative impact of like causing cancer. So
well, not really good. Yeah. Well, that's super nice, actually. I love it.
Thank you.
So currently you're working on many projects, like your and the artistic way and the teaching new artists. How you find that balance, and how you find that balance between art and science in your work and your many works?
Yeah, this is a good question. I don't know if I've found a balance necessarily. In terms of like working wise, I think I've really struggled to find a balance. I'm definitely a project kind of person. I like working on projects. I don't like sitting down and doing the same thing every day. So like being an artist was like a very good choice for me in terms of careers. And I like to do lots of different things, but I have struggled a lot over the past couple of years coming to terms with like this sort of American culture of like very capitalist productivity that's been like drilled in my head. And living in Germany and in Europe has been really good for that, because like you have to take vacation. They're just like, go away. We don't want to talk to you now. Come back in like 3 weeks when you've like chilled out, which is nice. And so I think I'm getting better at finding the balance between all the projects that I do, but I think it's still a work in progress, for sure. And for the balance between like science and art, I really don't think I put that much conscious decision making into creating a balance, because I'm a very project-based person. I think it depends on whatever outcome I want for the project or for the work to have, and that will kind of determine if I'll use sort of more attributes of science or art. So if I'll use more language of science, or if I'll use more like aesthetic positioning in art, it really depends on what I want to achieve with what I'm working on. So, yeah.
That makes sense.
Yeah.
And about the teaching, Italy University, is it the first one of that experience?
Yeah, so this is the first time that I've been teaching a whole class to myself, which has been really fun. I've never invented a class before, so that's been good. I have lectured at the University of Western Australia for a course called Neuroscience and Society about art and science collaborations, which was really fun. And that was kind of like my intro to teaching. And I did some other teaching-based work for that in terms of examinations and artwork stuff. But this class at ITMA has been really fun, and it's been really exciting to see like what the students are coming up with for ideas. They have this final artwork they have to make that will be hopefully in an exhibition in January, given like the circumstances with Corona. We'll see. So that will be at the gallery at the Art and Science Center, which will be really cool. And already they have so many cool ideas, and it's so exciting to see them excited. Like that makes me so happy. So
yeah, that's a pleasant experience, I think.
Yeah.
About quarantine, actually, about that Corona thing. What are the new things that you know now with that quarantine, and how your experience in work changed? Do you feel any changes?
In my work in particular, or just in general?
In general, in your work.
Cool. So for in general, like in the arts, or just like in society?
In the art world, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah, so for me personally with lockdown, I guess the biggest change, I've really been reevaluating. I think at the time that lockdown was happening, I was in this place where I was wondering if I wanted to keep pursuing art anymore, which was like, that was a big existential crisis that I was having. So awkwardly timed with the lockdown, but it ended up that I ended up choosing to like keep pursuing it. And also like before the lockdown happened, I was thinking if I was going to go back to America or not. So there was like a lot of different decisions I was making. And I think the lockdown really forced me to like make a decision and commit to it, which was really good for me in the end, because I think I'm much happier with the decisions that I've made. And I think where my professional career is going artistically is quite nice. And like I'm very happy with where I'm at in the world. I'm happy to have not been in America at that time, even though I feel very guilty at the same time. But I think I lucked out in terms of a lot of healthcare issues. But in terms of the art world, I think not necessarily so much to do with just the pandemic itself, but I feel like there's not as much change as I wish I could see right now in the art world, especially in terms of the current social movements that are happening and revolutions. I think the art world, and especially the science art part of the art world, needs to like address a lot of the systemic issues and barriers that are inhibiting people from creating art and working as artists and such. Like none of this is really new, especially like as we see by all these like movements and revolutions. Like these are problems that are just like have never been addressed or solved by anything. But I think especially in the art world, like there's so much that needs to be done, and I want this momentum of these rising social revolutions to really be able to fuel some like radical change in the art world and break down these systematic barriers of like racism and ableism and transphobia and white supremacy. Because I think the art world, like it likes to advertise itself as being open and accepting, and it isn't, which is like not that great. And it's really toxic. So I hope that I can keep reevaluating my position in it, as well as the privileges that I have in order to like speak out against injustices targeted at my peers and like make these demands to like have the art world step up in terms of creating the necessary equity and justice for other marginalized artists.
Yeah, I feel you.
Yeah, it's hard. Like, I think now like it's good that so much is like happening, that there's conversation, but I wish more change was also happening.
Yeah, some movements should now happen at this time.
Yeah. So.
Well, not many changes, yeah, I see. But maybe some patterns that there are in the art world for the last few years. Main theme.
Yeah, for sure. I think the past couple years I've seen this insane rise of like open calls and funding specifically for ecological and environmental based artworks, which is good because it's all trying to address climate change and the climate crisis and how we deal with sustainability in the future, and like kind of investigating what nature with a capital N is, and things like that. So I think that's really interesting, as well as and it's really driving the science art popularity as well. And I do think because of COVID, probably a lot more artwork's going to be made about public health and global public health.
Well, that's
sure.
true, yeah, for sure.
Yeah. And then I also think, on the other hand, like speaking about like the revolutions and social movements, that like art activism is now starting, like people are really looking at the history of art activism again and trying to like reflect on that as well, even though art activism, like I think is always popular in a sense, because that's part of the point, is to like grab a lot of people's attention. But I think like from an art history perspective, that's like becoming a recurring theme of historians looking back at the whole movements of it and seeing how it's impacted society.
Yeah. So, and about you, what was the biggest challenge you faced as an artist?
Yeah.
It wasn't that quarantine, actually. that one.
Possibly. I mean, I think my biggest challenge, partially what happened in quarantine and just always, I think like outside of things like, I mean, there's the basic challenges that I feel like every artist faces, like funding and institutional barriers and bureaucracy. But I think personally, I have these incredibly high standards for what I want my work to be, and this vision of like what I want to have for each project. And of course, like I never achieve that vision because I don't think you're supposed to.
Yes.
Yeah, I think that's why it's like, it's just a vision. It's not like reality. But but that like, it never feels good. It feels like you're climbing this mountain that you like doesn't get you anywhere. So sometimes I'll get like lost in rabbit holes and think like, oh, this isn't going to work. And I'll get imposter syndrome and whatnot. But I think, and like this has gotten easier as I've gotten older and the more work I've done, but you like start to trust yourself so that you know that that's going to happen. Like I think with even with like the grant proposals that I write now, I like write in them like by this certain week, like the project will probably like hit a lull and like the artwork, like the living material may die and I may have like a breakdown, but it's going to be okay because then I'm just going to like re-strategize and like put everything back together. So now I think I'm just like planning for like my failures to like, because I know like it'll get done in the end and like it'll be really nice. It's just like trusting the process of like, oh, this is not gonna feel so great probably around this middle week, and like it'll get better again.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah.
Yeah.
What are you currently working as an artist on? What project?
Yeah, so right now I have a couple of projects that I'm working on with Laura for potentially some upcoming things. Laura from who's also at IDVO. She's the manager of the lab and runs a lot of facilities. She's also teaching assisting for my current class. So I have some workshops I'm creating with her and some lectures as well. And then I have, let's see what else. I have an upcoming residency, hopefully with ITMO, depending on Corona. We'll see how that goes, but that will be creating this really cool project that's actually been like multiple years in the making, but it's about breast cancer and disease identity, and I'll be designing this like wearable device to take care of cancer cells, which will be really cool and interesting, and I'm like super excited to do the work when I get the chance. And outside of that, a lot of writing. Because like in Corona, that's the one thing that's guaranteed is like you can do writing.
Yes, yes, it is. Yeah.
So
Not so bad, actually.
no, not bad at all. And I think actually now that I'm remembering, Ambor has a Pachuca Cha event coming up, and so I'm going to be one of the speakers for that as well, and that will be really exciting. So these are like short 20-minute presentations, and we've invited a bunch of artists to come and give them, and so that will be something that Ambor Collective's hosting, and I think we're still in the processes of figuring out how we're going to set it up on our website or with a distributor, but it'll be really exciting.
The online event, yeah?
Yeah, it's an online event.
Like everything.
Yeah, that's what you got to do. So that will be really exciting, and I'm excited for that. Jess McCullough, our editorial and one of our founders, is like the leading on that, and so that's a really cool piece that she's got going that I'm excited to be a part of. Yeah.
So you're actually okay with that online exhibition thing and everything that art is now like online thing for,
I think
for
there's
that period.
You kind of just have to. There's no really choice.
Well, yes.
So it would be nice to like, right now it would be nice to be in Russia for my students and to do all these projects, but like that can't happen.
We were waiting for you.
Yeah. Oh, that would have been so much fun. I'm excited for when it does get to happen eventually. I have like faith that it will happen, hopefully. But yeah, I mean, I've already been working online with Ambor Collective. All our entire team is based in lots of different countries. Like we have the Netherlands, we have the UK, we have Italy, we have Germany. So nothing has changed about our workflow at all with Corona, because we were kind of already all online communicating. It's more just like how we make projects work. And if you have a website, lots of things can happen now. A website and a Zoom account is all you need. Yeah. So, yeah, I think you just got to make do with what happens, and hopefully
fake it till you make it.
For real.
Yeah, we were really waiting you in Russia and hope it will be soon that you visit us.
Yeah, no, really, fingers crossed. I'm like so excited for that.
So what advice would you give to ones who just have started the adventure in bioart?
Yeah, this is a really good question. Okay, I would say there's like two things. One is like educate yourself however you can. If you don't have the money or you're not able to go to a university or to like a program or to like do some like formal schooling in like bioart and biodesign or like in art and design, then like find as many resources online that you can. And there's like tons of DIY bio resources out there. And try like to absorb as much information as possible and look at other artists who've existed and like their works and like just try to like take it all in, because I think that's really key, is to, because you have to learn science and you have to learn art and you have to like excel in both of those to really achieve what you want. So it's a lot of learning and learning how to become scientifically literate. And then the second thing is, and this is coming as like someone who manages the social media for Ambor, is like really learn how to do documentation of your artworks and your process. I like cannot stress enough how important it is to have an online presence, especially on social media nowadays. And like there's so many artists that I sometimes see their works and I know about their works and I would love to like share it on the Ambor platform, but I can't because their image quality is terrible, or they have like no photos, or no visual documentation exists online. And so I think like even if you're not, like, if your projects take long years and, like, you don't get the final artwork until, like, after all those years of hard work on it, like, document your process, document, like, create diagrams of your designs and, like, layouts of the different materials you're using, like, do it as aesthetically as possible, and, like, put that online so that people can find you and they can see what you're doing and they can get interested in this visual journey that you're building. And kind of to, like, add on to that, also, like, learn how to write about art, because nothing is worse than, like, seeing an artist who posts their artwork but, like, doesn't know how to talk about their art and uses, like, these overly pretentious terms. Like, it should be accessible for everyone. So, like, yeah, learning to write about art is so important.
Well, any good examples of good presentation?
Yeah, so Vivian Zhu is a friend of mine, and she's actually who I learned how to do documentation from. During my master's degree, she was a resident at Symbiotica, and I, like, kind of, like, hopelessly followed her around everywhere for a while, being like, Vivian, how do you be successful? Vivian, I don't know what I'm doing with my life. And she was like, Lyndsey, you just need to get your shit together. Like, it'll be fine. Just, just do it. And so she, like, I followed her around to see how she took photos, and she, like, showed me how she set up her portfolio. Her portfolio is online. If you go to her website, you can see it there. And, like, she's really good at taking very aesthetically clean pictures of her works and her designs and her process, and it's really nice. And she's someone I really admire, especially because she took the time out to help me when I was probably just an annoying grad student. I'm trying to think who else is really good. I really like looking at the way that illustrators handle their online presence. I know it's, like, so different from bioart and biodesign and, like, that fine art world, but I think illustrators have really mastered social media presence, and they know how to like handle how they set up their process and how they set up, like, material layouts and, like, with their illustrations and stuff. And I think there's definitely some things that you can take from that, as well as, like, food stylists do a really good job with that. So, like, just leaving maybe, like, the formal art world to, like, go out to, like, these other aspects of creative, like, expression and finding that too.
Yeah, fine art is a good example. You can learn from them.
Yeah, for sure. So I think it doesn't change, like, just because you're working in a lab doesn't mean that you don't need to, like, match the same standards that other artists do to have a social media presence. Like, and find that good lighting. Most labs have terrible fluorescent lighting. Like, if it doesn't exist, make it. Bring your own lights. Like, some of the scientists will look at you weirdly, but, like, you just gotta do what you need to do.
So social presentation is the big deal, I see.
I would say, yeah. I think, especially if you're a new artist, a lot of the older artists who already have a very prominent career don't need to do this because everyone knows who they are. But if you're, like, starting out, no one's going to care about your work unless they can see it. So, and like, Instagram's great, where it's, like, it's a wonderful way to do. I mean, there's terrible privacy issues because of Facebook, but it is a great platform to, like, just get your stuff out there. Also, the algorithm's not the best, but still, it's something you can direct people to. Because, like, whenever I'm talking to people about what I do, they're like, "Oh, are you on Instagram?" And then I'll just give them my handle.
Yeah, that's because everyone using it, so that's in that part. That's a nice platform.
Yeah, it's, like, easier than giving people for the longest time I didn't have a website, which was really bad of me, but, like, I could give them my Instagram and they could see my work there. So if you, like, don't have a website, or, like, you're redesigning your website, or you can't afford a website because they're quite expensive to do. So, like, Instagram's a great way to, like, start building that following. Yeah. I don't know. I would love to see, like, a bio artist that masters TikTok. That's something I've yet to see.
I think you should start.
Start a TikTok. Oh, God. I'll have to see how long TikTok stays around for as well.
I think it should be, like, something like wines. So just a year.
Yeah.
Something like that.
Cool. I'll plan my, like, 1-year TikTok career. and then then quit.
You will be famous there, I'm sure.
Oh, that'd be interesting. Yeah. TikTok's one of those formats that I'm just like, this is really fascinating, but also really intimidates me. So I'd have to...
Well, we'll be waiting for your TikTok account.
Perfect.
Send a link.
Yes. Oh, God. I can only imagine going to a conference and being like, yeah, and here's my TikTok in case you need that.
Your CV, the website, Instagram, TikTok.
Yeah. I'll be really popular with the teens. They'll be like, she can do youth outreach very easily.
Yeah. Good start for them.
Yeah.
Lyndsey, thank you very much for this talk. I was super glad to see you.
Yeah, no, thank you so much again. Like, this has been lots of fun, and it's exciting to talk about these things. I never get to really talk about them, so.
Well, let's talk more about it next time.
Yes, for sure.
Okay, thank you very much again. Hope to see you in Russia in air residence, I think. Yeah?
Yes.
Yeah, waiting for you. Well, hoping for that Corona thing ends soon. And
yes.
Welcome.
Thank you.
That was CLOT Talks. See you in 2 weeks and learn even more about the modern art world. Stay tuned.